A blood-red storm tears across a barren alien desert. Lightning flickers against shattered towers. A lone man trudges through dust, his silhouette framed by chaos. The storm had passed, but the world still looked broken. Vadris 9 was never kind. A planet carved out of dust, wind, and rusted memory. Red sand hissed against metal ridges, whispering through old mining ruins like ghosts refusing to rest. Ronan Vale watched the horizon from the porch of his shelter, a cigarette burning low between two scarred fingers. He'd built the place himself, half steel, half stubbornness, and it creaked like an old soldier trying to remember why he was still alive. The storm's lightning had fried one of the condenser towers again. He sighed, wiped grit from his eyes, and kicked the loose panel back into place. "Another glorious morning in paradise," he muttered. A small spherical drone floated by his shoulder, dented and blinking. Its voice crackled through a damaged speaker. "Statistically, this is not paradise. Also, it's not morning." Ronan smirked. "Don't ruin my poetry, Pip." The drone buzzed indignantly. "That wasn't poetry." That was resignation with extra sarcasm. He almost laughed. Almost. Humor was the only thing that hadn't rusted yet. Inside, the shelter was Spartan, but neat. One bed, one table, one life preserved out of habit. On the shelf sat a tin box, scratched, dented, and to him, sacred. He opened it every few days to look at the crystal thread inside. Thin as hair, still faintly glowing after all these years. He never knew why it glowed. Maybe memory had a pulse. 15 years ago, he'd found them. Two alien children half buried in sand, shaking, hungry, afraid. He'd fed them his last rations, shared water he couldn't spare, and told himself it didn't matter. He was wrong. Everything since had felt like waiting for that moment to mean something. Now the planet had gone quiet again, and waiting was all that was left. A sudden noise cut through the wind. Not thunder, not the storm's leftover tantrum. Something smaller, closer, a clatter of rock against metal. Ronan froze. He moved for his rifle on instinct, then stopped halfway. The sound came again, faint like a cough, then silence. "Pip," he whispered. "Scan thermal." "Already on it," the drone replied, its sensor light flickering. "Heat signatures, 2, small." Southeast ridge. Ronan's chest tightened. That ridge, the same one. He hadn't gone back there in years. He holstered the rifle but took the lamp instead. The air outside still hummed with leftover static from the storm. He moved through it like a ghost retracing his own footprints. At first he saw nothing, just red dust and stone. Then the lamp's light caught something. Not metal, not bone. A shape. A mark carved into the rock. It was the same symbol from 15 years ago. A circle with 3 intersecting lines. Only now it glowed faintly, pulsing like it was breathing. "Pip," he murmured, "tell me that's not a trick of the light." "It's emitting low-frequency radiation," the drone said quietly. "Same resonance as the crystal thread in your tin." Ronan knelt, brushing his fingers over the symbol. The sand was still warm. Someone had been here recently. For a long moment, he just stared. Heart steady, but something deep inside him stirring, a pulse he hadn't felt in years. The wind shifted. He looked up. Lightning flickered far off again, streaking across the bruised sky. 15 years, he said under his breath, and the world's still trying to send me ghosts. Pip hovered closer, its tone softer than usual. "Maybe not ghosts, Ronan. Maybe a signal." Ronan glanced at the horizon, where the storm was rebuilding itself. Alive again. He closed the tin in his pocket and whispered, "Then I guess it's time I answered." Cut to black. The storm begins to rise again. The storms never stopped on Vadras 9. They just learned new ways to whisper. 15 years can grind down a mountain or a man. For Ronan Vale, it had done both. His beard was iron gray now, his hands rough as the stone he lived on. The outpost had grown too. More towers, better fencing, a half-working generator that hummed like a tired heart. He still talked to Pip's memory chip. The drone had died long ago, but he kept the voice module wired into his console. Sometimes it sputtered a phrase, a static laugh, A reminder that he'd once had company. He didn't drink, didn't pray, didn't count the days, only storms and repairs. Each sunrise felt like a polite apology from a planet that didn't care if he existed. Then one evening, the scanner cracked alive with a noise he hadn't heard in years. A coded pulse buried under static. It was weak, rhythmic, almost musical. 3 beats. Pause. 2. Pause. 3 again. His breath caught. That same pattern had glowed on the ridge 15 years ago. "Don't do this," he muttered to no one. "Not again." But curiosity was stronger than good sense. He followed the signal through rising wind until he stood at the ridge. The mark was gone, sand scoured, smooth. But something moved beyond it. Headlights? Number. Too soft. 2 silhouettes stepped out of the storm. Tall, cloaked, silent. Lightning flashed behind them, turning the world into a single frozen image. Silver eyes, etched skin, rain cutting down armored plates. For a heartbeat, he thought the storm had finally killed him, and this was the hallucination that came after. The taller one pulled back her hood. "Ronan Vale," she said, her voice steady but carrying an accent he remembered from a whisper years ago. He lowered his rifle slowly. You can't be." The smaller one smiled faintly. "You fed us once." Every part of him locked still. Their faces were sharper, their gazes older, but the eyes, those eyes, were the same. The storm howled around them, flinging sand like knives. He gestured toward the shelter. "Inside, before the planet decides to eat us." They followed. Inside, the air smelled of iron and coffee. The lamplight hit their armor. Alien alloy, scored and dented from battles he couldn't imagine. Ronan poured water into 3 cups. His hands shook. "I buried you in my memory a long time ago." The older one, Vara, he remembered, set her cup down untouched. "We weren't dead. We were taken. We escaped." "By who?" She hesitated. The younger Saren spoke instead. "The corporation that built us. To them, we were weapons. To you, we were children." Ronan leaned back, the truth settling like dust. "And now?" Vera's eyes met his. "Now we're hunted for choosing not to kill." For a while no one spoke, only the wind scratching against the walls. Saren noticed the tin on the shelf and opened it gently. The crystal thread inside pulsed brighter near her hand. "You kept this?" He shrugged, trying for humor and failing. Wasn't sure if it was a souvenir or a curse. That made her laugh. A real sound, light and strange in the heavy air. Vera rose first. "We came because we need help." Ronan sighed. "I retired from saving anyone." "Not this time," Vera said. "They'll come for you too. You were the only human who defied their orders 15 years ago. You kept their property alive." Ronan rubbed a hand over his beard, feeling the old stubbornness crawl back under his skin. "Figures. Feed a couple of aliens, and the galaxy never lets you forget." Outside, thunder rolled again. Deeper now, like footsteps. Saren's voice softened. "They'll reach this ridge by dawn." Ronan looked from one sister to the other, then toward the door in the endless dark beyond it. "Well," he said quietly, grabbing his rifle, "breakfast first. Then we find out who's stupid enough to chase ghosts in my desert." The sisters exchanged a glance, half relief, half something older. And for the first time in 15 years, the shelter didn't feel empty. Cut to the storm, lightning cracking like the start of war. Morning came slow, crawling out of the storm like something half afraid to be seen. The desert was washed clean, if anything on Vadris 9 could ever be called clean. The sand darker, the air sharp and humming. Ronan stood by the broken condenser tower, tightening a bolt that didn't want to be tightened. The sisters were already awake, moving with a kind of wordless rhythm that made the place feel strangely alive. Vera hauled a cracked power cell out to the yard and slammed it onto the generator with one arm. Sparks spat. She didn't flinch. Saren crouched beside the water pump, coaxing the old machine with quiet patience until it purred again. "You two planning to rebuild my whole settlement before breakfast?" Ronan called out. Saren glanced up, smiling faintly. "You're welcome. I wasn't thanking you. I was complaining on principle." Vera's lips twitched. almost a laugh, and somehow that felt like a victory. Inside the shelter, the air smelled of brewed coffee and hot metal. Ronan poured 3 cups and sat across from them. He tried to pretend this was normal, 2 alien women in battle armor at his kitchen table. But normal had left him years ago. "Start talking," he said finally. "Who's chasing you?" "The corporation," Vara answered. "Same as always. But it's different now. They've built something worse, a fleet that hunts people like us. They call it reclamation." Saren set her cup down carefully. "They don't just want us back. They want anyone who helped us." Erased Ronan leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking beneath his weight. "So I'm on the list." "You were always on the list," Vara said simply. He exhaled through his nose, a wry smile ghosting across his face. "Good to know I've still got fans out there." For a moment there was quiet, a fragile peace built on coffee and exhaustion. Then the outer sensors crackled to life. 3 short beeps, motion on the ridge. Ronan's expression shifted, all humor gone. "Visitors." They moved fast, practiced. Vara grabbed her plasma blade. Saren slipped to the window, eyes bright, scanning the dust outside. Through the haze, Ronan saw them. 3 riders on hoverbikes, corporate scouts wearing desert cloaks and polished badges. Mercenaries, the kind who thought morality was optional with the right paycheck. "Stay low," Ronan said. "Let me talk first." He stepped outside, rifle slung loose but ready. The wind tore at his coat as the riders approached. The one in front grinned down from his seat, voice oily with confidence. "Morning, settler. Word is, you've got company that doesn't belong here." Ronan shaded his eyes against the sun. "Lots of things don't belong here, you included." The rider's grin thinned. "Cute. Let's see the women." Ronan's tone went cold. "No one here but me and a dying sense of humor." The man's hand drifted to his weapon. "Wrong answer." Before he could draw, a shadow moved behind Ronan. Vara, stepping into view, her armor flaring with faint light. The mercs froze. Even half hidden by stormlight, she radiated danger. Saren appeared beside her, smaller, quieter, but her eyes burned like polished steel. The lead merc spat. "You really want to die for them, old man?" Ronan didn't blink. "I already did. 15 years ago. You're just late to the funeral." It was over in seconds. Vera's blade flashed, slicing the rider's gun in 2. Saren lifted her hand. A vibration rolled through the air, throwing sand like water. The mercs' bikes wobbled, engines stuttering. They bolted, vanishing into the storm they'd ridden from. Silence dropped heavy afterward, only the wind and the hiss of the cooling generator. Ronan lowered his rifle, heart pounding. "You didn't kill them." Vera cleaned her blade with a shrug. "They'll tell the others what they saw." Fear travels faster than bodies. He met her gaze. "You could have handled that without me." Saren smiled softly. "Maybe. But we didn't want to." He didn't answer. Didn't need to. The 3 of them just stood there, the storm rolling back over the plains, the world somehow smaller and more dangerous, but less lonely. That night they ate in silence. The shelter's lights flickered, shadows dancing over steel walls. Outside, thunder grumbled, but no one looked away from the table. For the first time in 15 years, Ronan didn't eat alone. Fade to black as lightning flashes again, a storm forming on the horizon. The sky broke open at dawn. Vadris 9 didn't ease into daylight. It tore it apart. Lightning forked over the ridges, painting the land in bruised gold. Ronan watched from the porch, rifle balanced across his knees, the weight of the night still clinging to his shoulders. Inside, the sisters moved like soldiers, preparing for Judgment Day. Vera checked the charge packs of her armor with the calm of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. Saren tightened the straps on her gauntlets, fingers trembling only once before she caught herself. "They'll come," Vera said quietly. "Scouts don't vanish without report." Ronan nodded. "Then let's make their report interesting." He tried to sound casual, but the edge in his voice gave him away. Saren looked up from the workbench where she was rewiring one of Pip's old drones. "You're afraid," she said, not accusing, just stating a fact. He half smiled. "Only a bad coffee and worse company," Vera snorted. the closest thing she ever gave to laughter. You never change. They spent the morning reinforcing the shelter, metal sheets welded over weak walls, sandbags piled near the entrance, water drums rolled into cover. The sisters' alien tools hummed with light, merging human steel and unknown alloys until the whole place looked half alive. Ronan couldn't help noticing how easily they worked together, moving like parts of the same machine. For a moment he wondered if that was what family meant. Not blood, just rhythm. By noon the wind went still. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Then the first sound came, a low, distant rumble that didn't belong to thunder. Engines. Ronan climbed to the lookout ridge. Across the desert, a line of dust rose like smoke. Through his scope, he counted a dozen hover trucks, armored corporate logos burned into their sides. Drones circled above them like black insects. "Company's here," he said into the comm bead. Back at the shelter, Vara flexed her hands, blue light blooming beneath her skin. Saren's eyes flickered the same color, softer but no less fierce. They met him at the fence. No speeches, no fear, just three people who had already decided where they'd fall. The convoy stopped within shouting distance. A tall man stepped out from the lead truck, his coat spotless despite the dust. Corporate issue, command rank, polished voice. "Ronan Vale," he called, "you're harboring property that doesn't belong to you." Ronan leaned against the post. "Funny thing. Everything out here belongs to whoever can keep it." The man smiled thinly. "You can't keep them. You couldn't even keep your family." That one landed like a bullet. For a heartbeat, the world went silent. Then Ronan raised his rifle. "You should have led with that." The first shot tore through the quiet. The ridge exploded into chaos, plasma bolts screaming through the air, sand bursting into clouds. Ronan ducked behind the fence, returning fire in sharp, efficient bursts. Vara vaulted the barrier, moving with impossible speed, her blade cutting bright arcs through dust. Saren lifted both hands. The ground shook as a pulse of resonance rolled outward, throwing drones from the sky like metal rain. "Remind me not to argue with you," Ronan shouted over the roar. Saren's laugh was breathless. "Too late." They fought until the sand itself seemed to bleed light. When Ronan's rifle overheated, he grabbed a wrench and swung it like a club. Metal on armor, fury on fear. A plasma bolt grazed his shoulder. Pain flared white. He staggered and Saren caught his arm, her markings blazing as she pushed energy into him. The burn cooled. The bleeding stopped. "You healed me." "Borrowed energy," she whispered. "Don't waste it." He grinned through the pain. "No promises." The last truck tried to retreat, engines whining, but Vera hurled her blade through its hood. It crashed into the ridge and burned. When the smoke settled, silence swallowed the desert again. The horizon shimmered with heat and wreckage. Ronan dropped to one knee, breathing hard. "We're alive." Saren helped him up, her hand lingering on his chest where the wound had been. "For now." Vera stood over the smoking remains of a drone, eyes narrowed. "They'll send more." Ronan looked at the wreckage, then at the sisters, dust clinging to their faces, armor scorched but spirits unbroken. "Then we'll be ready," he said. "Next time, we bring the storm." Above them, lightning crawled across the clouds again, silent, waiting, cut to black. The wind starts to rise. By the time the smoke cleared, the sky had turned the color of bruised copper. The desert was quiet again, but it wasn't peace, just the pause between storms. Ronan leaned against what was left of the fence, one hand pressed to his shoulder where Saren's healing light had faded. His breath came slow and uneven, the air still thick with the scent of burnt sand and melted alloy. The sisters stood a few paces away, faces lit by the flicker of dying fires. Vara's armor was cracked across the chest. Saren's hands trembled from overuse of her power. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Then Ronan said softly, "If that was round one, I'd hate to see round two." Saren smiled despite the exhaustion. "You still joke after almost dying?" "Helps me check if I'm alive." She laughed, weak but real, and that sound felt louder than the battle ever had. They buried the wrecked drones in a shallow pit beside the ridge. Vera insisted. "Even machines deserve silence," she said, voice rough. Ronan didn't argue. He'd learned not to when she spoke like that. Back at the shelter, the power was gone. The wind slipped through shattered vents, carrying the smell of ozone and dust. Ronan lit an oil lamp, setting it between them on the table. It burned low, warm and steady. For the first time since dawn, they sat down. No words, just breathing, the quiet rhythm of survival. Outside, stars blinked through the smoke, small and defiant. Saren reached for the tin on the shelf. The crystal thread inside still glowed faintly, pulsing with the same pattern that had haunted his life. She placed it on the table beside her own, the one she had carried all these years. The two threads brightened until their light filled the room. "It reacts to you," she murmured. Ronan shook his head. "It reacts to us." Vara rested her palms on the table, watching the glow spread across the wood. "The bond," she said quietly, "wasn't an accident. We were designed for war. But the moment you fed us, something rewrote that code." Saren's eyes glistened. "You changed what we were meant to be." He looked from one sister to the other. "I just gave you food." "You gave us choice," Vera corrected. Silence again, heavier but kinder this time. The lamp flickered and outside thunder grumbled somewhere far away. Then a soft ping from the scanner broke the stillness, a signal fading fast. Ronan stood, reading the faint pulse. It wasn't an attack, a ship leaving orbit, heading away from Vadris 9. "They're pulling back," he said. "For now," Vera answered. Saren leaned against the doorframe, her voice gentle. "Then we rebuild." Together, Ronan studied the wrecked interior. The walls scorched, the floor cracked, and exhaled. "Guess I always wanted a renovation." Her smile was tired but bright. "We'll make it better than before." Days passed differently after that. They rebuilt the shelter with what they had left: metal from fallen drones, crystal shards from the ridge. The air inside began to hum faintly, a blend of human machinery and alien resonance. At dusk, they'd sit outside watching the storms crawl across the horizon, not as threats anymore, but as part of the world's pulse. One evening, Saren's glow began to fade faster than before. The healing had cost her more than she'd admitted. Ronan noticed her leaning heavily against the wall and caught her before she slipped. "Still pretending you're fine?" he asked. "Still pretending you're not worried?" she countered, smiling weakly. He held her hand until the tremor eased. The light between their palms brightened again, faint but stubborn. Vera joined them, kneeling beside the two. "We're bound now," she said. "Whatever happens next, we face it together." Ronan met her gaze. "You two keep saying that like I've got a choice." "You don't," Vera said, and for the first time her grin wasn't sharp but soft. Outside, the storm finally broke. Rain fell. Real rain, not acid dust, washing the metal clean. It was the first rainfall Vadris 9 had seen in decades. The sound filled the silence, a heartbeat for a planet learning how to live again. Ronan stepped into it, letting the water soak through his coat. Saren joined him, tilting her face to the sky. Vera followed, standing tall beside them, three silhouettes under alien rain. Ronan's voice was almost lost in the wind. 15 years ago, I fed two strangers. Now I don't even remember what loneliness tastes like." Saren looked up at him. "That's because you're ours now." Vera nodded. "And we're yours." He didn't argue. Some truths didn't need words. As dawn crept over the horizon, light spilled across the rebuilt shelter, metal and crystal gleaming together. The bond threads on the table pulsed in sync, three heartbeats woven into one rhythm. Ronan smiled, faint and content. "The world called you weapons," he said quietly. "I call you home." The sisters stood beside him, eyes reflecting the new sun. Together, they watched the desert blaze into gold.